Hi, it's Andy with West Valley 411. In this short video, we're going to look at a bunch of tips and mistakes to avoid when pouring a small concrete job. So, first thing I suggest is figure out what to do with the excess concrete when you're done with your job. And one idea is to make a stepping stone. You can pour the excess concrete into a small bucket like this, flatten out the surface a bit with one of your tools, and then put your initials. You can put the date. You can do an impression with your hand. You can take a pet, put his paw into it. If you have a horse or even an elephant, put their impression into it, and then you have it saved for as long as you keep your stepping stone. And you know, it can be half an inch, an inch. You can make multiple stepping stones. Or if you have an area in your yard where you want to pour material over the area that has a lot of drainage and washes out a lot of soil, that'll kind of firm it up, and you can really dilute your concrete after you put it in your bucket, stir it around, and then pour it in an area where you feel you have best use for it. Second tip is you really got to make sure you do not underestimate the amount of concrete that you need, because you can't make a trip to Home Depot after you've poured your material and it's already set up. So let me grab the camera and let's look at a quick calculation. All right, now here's the job that we're going to pour, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. But in looking at your calculation, this area that we just looked at is about 5 feet by a foot by 4 inches. So you have to convert everything into feet to do the calculation. So 68 inches, which is 5 feet 8 inches, or 5 8/12 of a foot, and you divide 8 by 12 and you get 0.66. So you've got your first measurement here, which is 5.66. Then you look at your width. Again, this is 14 inches, or a foot and 2 inches. 1 foot 2 inches over 12 is 1.16, and so forth. The same with the height. 4 inches 4/12 of a foot equals 0.33. Then you take length times width times height. This calculation comes out to 2.16 cubic feet. And of course, there's about a half of a cubic foot per bag, or 0.45. So you take 2.16 divided by 4.5, and that gives you 4.8 bags. So you'll round it up to 5, and you'll have a little bit left over. It could be some in your wheelbarrow, could be some, you know, in your mixing equipment, or maybe you've spilled some, so maybe you don't have too much left over, but you can always use that to apply it to one of the uses that we talked about before. All right, next tip is when you're finishing your material, you're going to want to broom it so you have a non-stick slip surface. But you can't really use just a regular household broom because the edges are feathered. Hopefully you can see that clearly. And that's not going to give you the kind of finish that you want. Also, this is just a regular push broom. These are also partially feathered. So the best thing to use is a concrete broom. They're about 10 bucks. You'll use it more than once. They're not feathered, and they'll give you a really nice, clean finish, non-slip surface. The next thing that I recommend, and this is going to require a little bit of investment, is you got to have the right tools. At a very minimum, you've got to have a trowel so you can smooth the surface out and finish it properly. Then you're going to need a edging tool that looks like this. It's got a little lip on it so that you can get a nice clean edge when you're finishing edges of your sidewalk. I didn't pour this particular one, but here's a control joint tool, and you can see, you know, sidewalks always have areas that are broken up because that's where you want it to crack. And it's basically got a little groove in the end and allows you to get up really nice and close to structures or other areas. You can tip it, and there's techniques to make that happen that we'll talk about as we go forward. So coming back over to our project, I really advocate doing the best you can to try to do a monolith pour. If you've got multiple bags to do over an area, and it takes you 10 minutes per batch, and you put 2 bags into a wheelbarrow, you know, here in California it gets really hot in the summer, and if you've got multiple mixes to make, it's going to start setting up and you're not going to be able to finish it very well. So, you know, get some help. Don't do the job by yourself, and you'll have a better outcome. Also, you got to make sure the slope of your project is allows for water runoff. Now, as you can see here, we've accommodated the slope on the existing sidewalk up against the building here, and you want to make sure that you get about 2% slope, or about 1/4 inch per foot. That's kind of the industry standard. And as you can see here, the material up against the concrete pad is this asphalt expansion joint, and that allows the slab to move and not butt up against or put stress on structures like my existing sidewalk here in the concrete slab. So it's interesting, when we applied the asphalt expansion product here, this area is not square or flat. There's a lot of undulation, so I've got it supported right now before we do the pour. And you know, I also had to add more material down here because obviously it's not flat. This was an existing project. I didn't want to add dirt on top of it, and that'll allow the concrete not to settle quite as much. So as you can see, it goes all the way around, and you know, that's going to allow us to have it's going to require that we use a little bit more concrete. Now, this is a pretty small area, and you wouldn't think we need 5 bags, but if you look at some areas, I've got to clean this up a bit because we just had a storm, but we'll take all the leaves and stuff out of that. And then on the sides of your project, since I don't have to frame this with 2x4s, but I probably will screed so that you know, we get concrete in the right spots. You're going to want to stake it, and here you can see some screws that are up against the 2x4 here that's been made flush to the existing project, and then gives a guide around the top. So we'll get some help. Now let's go on to our next part, which is doing the actual pour. So stay with us, and we'll get everything mixed up. All right, one of my helpers bailed at me at the last minute, so we're gonna have to wait till he gets back. I know people are busy, but I want to make sure we have 3 people because we got 3 containers, and I want to do a monolith pour so all the material gets in there at the same time. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to review our plan. We're going to measure, mix, pour, screet, bull float. It's kind of a small area, but we're going to pack down the aggregate to make sure that it's below the surface. Then we're going to wait 30 minutes, get the water to reabsorb. Then we're going to edge, joint, finish, and then broom. So let me show you the containers that we have here so that it facilitates our plan to get everything done at once. We've got a couple of storage containers. I've poured concrete in these before. I've got a little mini hoe, the sister of the big hoe, trowel. We have wheelbarrow. With the big hoe, we're going to do 2 bags in the wheelbarrow and 1.5 bags in the other containers, and then we've got some shovels here to scoop it out into the framed area. So as soon as they arrive, we'll get started. All right, another tip is get yourself some kind of a dolly or hand truck to move your concrete. They're 60 or 80 pounds each. Don't be a hero. Save your back. And also get some kind of a respirator. Everyone's got an N95 hanging around from the pandemic. You don't want to risk lung disease or silicosis. All right, how much water should you add? People at Saccrete make it super easy. Just add 2.5 quarts. And then for construction standards, you'll hear about PSI mentioned quite a bit. Pounds per square inch of construction weight on top of your concrete, and it takes 28 days for this to get to full strength. So in our project, basically we're not even walking on it, which you've seen earlier. We're just going to put probably a storage unit or maybe a waste container on top of it. Here's another mistake to avoid. Don't let anyone see you reading instructions, especially at the store. Not your wife, and definitely not your girlfriend. Remember, you know everything about pouring concrete. Don't let there be any questions about your expertise. Nobody asked Columbus what he was doing. All right, on the back, there's some reminders about how much water to add, 2.5 quarts per bag, and make sure the temperature is above 40 degrees. Plenty of instructions on the back. Create a crater, mixing it, surfacing it, and then some rather confusing calculations here about how much concrete you need. Mine were much clearer, so use that as a better safety tip. But just remember, each bag is about half of a cubic foot of concrete mixed. All right, we're going to use 60-pound bags, and let's get to it. All right, here's our measuring container. It's 1 quart, just in case you forgot about how much that is. On the other side, it's liters. My kindergarten teacher told me we're moving to metric years ago, but that never happened. All right, we have the area wetted down and ready to go. We're going to be pouring on partial clay and partial footing. So this clay has been compacted and is not going to be moving anywhere. So we don't need rocks. We got our water measured, our 3 containers, and just for reference, here's a concrete pad we poured about 15 years ago. It's a little shower pad out in the backyard, and so that's held up really nicely. It was broomed, double broomed to give extra grip. So let's get started. All right, we've got a reservoir in the middle. We're going to pour about 1/3 of the water into your container. Alright, so here's my extra. I'm pouring it into this little byway next to my rock area. Pretty clean. All right, you can see the work area is full. That's about how much we have left in the wheelbarrow. We calculated 4.8 sacks, so that's just about right. So now we're going to screed this and then go from there. Let's get set up. All right, now we got the right amount of material in place. I'm just tapping down all of the aggregate to get it below the surface in kind of a float fashion. We got some extra screeded amount over on the side, and this is the amount. This is a 1 3/4 gallon bucket, and it's about almost half full. So it looks like our calculations are correct. All right, the concrete is setting up nicely. We are about 20 minutes after the pour. We're going to wait a little bit longer. The 20-mile-an-hour winds have calmed down just a little bit, but as you can see, the sun is setting. So I think what we'll do is we'll put an edge on it. We'll put in the control lines, control joint, and then finish it from there. All right, here's another tip. Instead of making a stepping stone, I'm going to take the handle from a 2.5 gallon bucket, bent the edges, and then we're going to insert it into this bucket of leftover concrete. Put that all the way in. Make sure it's level. And then we'll use that as just as a weight, doorstop. I know the bottom won't be completely flat because these buckets kind of undulate on the bottom, but we'll see the finished product in a few days. All right, in touching the surface, there's a little bit of give, so it's the right time to edge. So we're just going to edge this part over here. It's the only one that's exposed. And then we may release the wood frame there in a little while. So let's edge that first. All right, it's pretty straightforward. That's probably the shortest edge job ever, because that's the only part we're going to edge. Now we're going to do our expansion joint along here. All right, we got the control joints cut in. Now we're going to do the final finish and then just touch up those lines. The sun is kind of fading, so it might be a little bit more challenging to see that. We did get some of the concrete onto the existing sidewalk, but that should brush off fairly well. So far so good. All right, it is basically dark. We got some spotlights out here. Finishing is done. Now all we have to do is broom. Concrete's setting up nicely. Just thought I'd show you my little dating implement. Used to be a kind of a hook. Now it's dulled off with all the scraping I've done, and it works great just to tap in your date. Here's something you don't see on YouTube concrete videos very often. We're 2 days after the pour and it's drying out nicely. The control lines look good. They align with the existing sidewalk. The expansion joint up at the top was the right level for our pour. The date looks good, and when we took out the wood framing, it was just a couple of screws on the stakes, and you can see where the concrete stained the wood here. There was some dirt on the lower end of the dimensions, but that's fine. We'll fill that area in with dirt. And one mistake that I kind of wanted to highlight is there was a tapering of the sidewalk here. So I wanted this part of the pour to be a little bit higher, and it was kind of tough to do with the joint tool. Maybe I should have used the edge tool. But let's do a test. We're going to pour some water on it to see if in fact the back end up here is at a higher elevation, and if the water pours off as it should during a rain. So here we go. Gradually pour some on. You can see it's not going uphill. It goes up in that direction and then comes back. So that's really a good result. Also, it's flowing to the right through that joint, and then down the side. I'll pour a little bit more over here. See if we get the same result. It goes up a little ways and then comes back down, so I'm happy with that. All right, last thing, let's take a look at what we did with our excess concrete. Here is our weight with a handle. Let me see if I can pull this out. Oh, hang on, I gotta use my other hand. Here it comes. And there we are. I'm pretty happy with that. You know, you can use it for weights to keep things down when it's windy, or as a doorstop. One thing that's interesting about concrete expansion, and this is why we need control joints, when this was out in the sun drying, I could not remove it from the bucket. Even if it expands 1 or 2% in the hot sun, concrete definitely needs room to move, and that's why it cracks, and that's why we got control joints. So hope this video has been helpful. Please give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and check out my other videos on various homeowner DIY projects around the house. Thanks for watching. Take care. This is an epilogue to our video and a final tip. We are 12 days out from our pour, and as you can see, the concrete is mostly dried. There's a small area here that'll probably take another couple of days on its way to 28 days and being fully cured. So if you are a professional and you have a tip on how to match concrete, you can see there's a difference in color between the two pours. And looking around the neighborhood, it always seems like there is a difference. It's really tough to match because the existing pour here is 19 years old and has been bleached by the sun, and is probably a different color than the original. So again, thanks for watching. Please share any thoughts or ideas you have, and take care.